going on, Jerome's? So, mercifully, we're going to get some resolution and some movement here on the offseason. It's not really drama, because I feel like it's 95% going to be J.J. McCarthy's show. But what happens with Darnold? Do the Vikings just let him go in free agency and then hope for a 2026 comp pick? Or are they able to put the franchise tag on him by the deadline next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Time, the only time zone that matters, and work out a tag and trade as Kwesi and all the other GMs and decision makers are in Indianapolis right now? Let's make a deal. All that stuff. And of course, Darnold, the bridge quarterback, 1 year, $10 million, 14 wins. Had some good times, also had some bad times. And Darnold, with his performance in the last 2 games against the Lions and the Rams, probably cost himself $50 million guaranteed. And I'm not even kidding. But either way, in a draft class that doesn't have high-end quarterback talent, and in a free agent class is definitely bereft of it as well, Darnold's going to get paid. He's going to get taken care of. Now, is it going to be open free agency, or will it be an extension after a tag and trade with the Vikings? So it certainly could go both ways. Now, I've noticed, since it's my job to see which way the wind is blowing, take the temperature of the media rectally, there's definitely been a tone shift in terms of how the media has approached Sam Darnold. And we pointed out yesterday where Rap Sheet was very bullish, when he wasn't getting yelled at by Jordan Schultz. He's very bullish on the Vikings, basically being like, hey, if you want Sam Darnold, come and get him in a tag and trade, which kind of floored me because this came out of nowhere. Where are you going? Nowhere. Where this hadn't really been talked about before, right? And then you had Tom Pelissero, who's as dialed in with the Vikings as anyone in the national media. Of course, he used to be a local Smoky, talking with Tatum Everett on Vikings Entertainment Network. Some interesting stuff and things. Talk about Darnold. Quote, you could potentially do a deal that's sort of a bridge quarterback. You could potentially franchise tag Darnold that you could try to work. Then you could try to work out a deal or play 1 year on the tag, or even do a tag and trade. Now, that's something that Pelissero hadn't really brought up about Darnold before. So again, everything's tying together in the tone shift. Also, it seems like he's sort of selling Darnold. There's not another top quarterback out there, especially not one who's 27 years old. Vikings have to consider all the options here. There's no precedent for letting this guy, at this stage of his career, coming off a 14-win season, where those last 2 games notwithstanding, he played his best football, and just letting him walk for a future compensatory pick. So basically, greasing the skids, talking about getting a tag and trade done. And like I said, Rap Sheet just completely coming out of nowhere, just completely throwing darts and flame throwing the potential for a tag and trade. Pelissero talking about the same. There's been a shift. There's definitely been a shift in the way that the media has approached Sam Darnold, and I think a lot of it has to do with which way the wind is blowing, as well as how some teams are approaching free agency and the draft with their quarterbacks. And I think this week in Indianapolis, they're going to see some of these quarterbacks up close and personal. Some are going to throw. Some are just going to do interviews. And that could go into the decision-making of like, hey, instead of drafting a quarterback, let's go get us some Sam Darnold, right? And just our back of the envelope, which way the winds are blowing, how the media's talked about Darnold. So end of season, it almost seemed like a fait accompli. Well, J.J. McCarthy's waiting there, but a multi-year extension for Sam Darnold. Now, Darnold had come close to playing himself into that scenario where if the season had ended after the Packers game, this is the high point of the Roman Empire. Yeah. Then I definitely would have been on board. In fact, I was on board because Darnold, frankly, was playing like a top 5 quarterback and an MVP adjacent QB, right? And J.J. McCarthy, I love him to death, but if Darnold was going to have that hot hand, he was going to be the guy. And if he had stayed hot through the playoffs, led the Vikings on a magic carpet ride, then it's a much different conversation. But that's literally how bad the last 2 games were. But media end of season, a lot of them just assumed that the Vikings would sign him long term. And then whatever happened with JJ happened. Senior Bowl, a lot of talk about the franchise and even transition tag, where the Vikings would keep him by hook or by crook, $4 to $1 million for the franchise tag. Maybe Kwesi got creative, saved a little cash, kept him for 36 on the transition tag. That was a talking point. And then also, the interregnum between Senior Bowl and Combine, extension up to a price like Kurt. And that's also something that Pelissero talked about with Tatum Everett. It's like, hey, we'll give you a deal up to this certain point. If you can get more, God bless you, good times. And that's something that we've talked about too. But now Combine, tag and trade has entered the chat because all of this rest of the time, there wasn't really that talk. It was pretty binary of either extend Darnold, tag Darnold, keep him in some fashion for 2025, or let him walk in free agency. The tag and trade hadn't really entered the conversation, but now it definitely has in a big way, which leads you to believe that that's the steam going on in Indianapolis. And Rap Sheet and Pelissero, they talk to all the GMs, they talk to all the agents, and people talk to each other, and that's the buzz right now. I think outside of Stafford, going to the Raiders with Tom Brady, hey, Rap Sheet, are they at the Montana Ski Lodge or are they not? I don't know. But that's what's tangible, and I feel like that's what's being relayed. They're not making up out of whole cloth, so that does make you raise an eyebrow a little bit because the Vikings only have 4 draft picks this year, and it would be nice to get some immediate draft capital, especially some decent draft capital, probably in the second round range, plus versus waiting and hoping that you get a comp pick in 2026, which whatever. But I do think that there are three key players in all of this: the Rams, the Raiders, and the Steelers. And I think right now that those 3 are the top landing spots because they have the cap. Rams, if and when they trade Stafford, are going to get some draft capital back. They currently don't have a second-round pick, but that could certainly be in play. I mean, the Steelers, I feel like they feel they're just a quarterback away. And Darnold looked really damn good. Could he work out in the Arthur Smith system? Potentially. And with the Raiders, if the Raiders don't get Stafford, I do think that they'll be number 1 all-in on Sam Darnold. Also, they have 2 second-round picks. They got an extra one from the Devontae Adams Jets trade, which is just so stupid. So I honestly do think that the tag and trade is in play, and the fact that esteemed national media jabroni haircuts like Rap Sheet and especially like our guy Tom Pelissero, they're openly talking about it when they hadn't really brought it up before, leads me to believe that beep bop 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 boop. That's the scuttlebutt. Going on right now. Kwesi, get it done. Go get a second round pick for our man, and second rounder is where the thickness, THICC, of this draft is going to be. So go get it done. But your thoughts are thoughts. Media has noticeably shifted their tone on Sam Darnold throughout this offseason. Let's go. Let us know your thoughts, our thoughts, comment section. You guys are the best to do. Skull production value.